Fargo at first, and I actually worked at Wells Fargo while going to school here at UAA.
And then you've worked on political campaigns, you've been an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
AI, he's done a lot. And so, pleasure to introduce him.
Yeah,
and
appreciate it.
He's got a great story to tell.
You know, it's actually really interesting. As I started doing, I actually started a financial literacy class here at UAA before there was a personal finance course. So before that ever existed, I actually started my own financial literacy class, partnered with Wells Fargo. So Wells Fargo comped all the costs, and the university allowed me to have a room access, and students would come and learn about credit cards and debit cards. It was free, got pizza. It was just a really cool little event. So that was almost a decade ago, maybe a little bit more actually. So I've done a lot since then, but yeah, I was a banker at Wells Fargo. I did that. I was a business banker, commercial banker for about a decade. So I did that also with KeyBank. And actually met one of my clients, Mead Treadwell. He was a former lieutenant governor here in Alaska. And that's how I met your professor here. And so I was invited because I was doing a presentation regarding artificial intelligence and the use cases in politics in particular. And so I've actually done, after banking, I went and started a business with my brother and sold that business to him and moved out of state, lived on Bainbridge Island for 3 years. And in that time, I came across a client. I did consultancy for businesses and politicians, and I worked on Senate campaigns, U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, governor races, state races, both states, House and Senate, and also local elections for school board and assembly races and city council races in other states. So Arizona, Georgia, like pretty much I think I've covered about 13 states so far I've worked in some capacity. And so in that time when I was living on Bainbridge, one of my clients lived out in California. He worked for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for NASA. And so he is actually an artificial intelligence guru. He's been studying data. He was a data scientist for a long time. And so 20 years he's worked for NASA. And he's actually, he was my client at the time. I built him a website and started helping him sell his books. And so it was just kind of a consultancy business thing at the time, and it's grown. We've been doing like statewide education summits for Alaska, partnered with the Alaska State Senate. And so the state senator was the chairman of education. And so for 2 years now, actually tomorrow at 8 a.m., we're going to be doing our fourth event with that gentleman from NASA. His name is Dr. Mattman. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But he's actually a fascinating individual, very open-minded to doing joint education events with people and offering incentives to people to come and learn about AI, learn about the different technologies that NASA's doing. And our very first event that we did do with Senator Holland was for the Mars rover and the Mars helicopter when they first landed. So 2 years ago now. So we're just doing follow-up on that. And so that's tomorrow, 8 a.m. in the morning. And so very exciting. But like I said, AI is very vast. It's huge, and so it covers every area. And so just like I was saying, we're talking about NASA, and today we're going to be talking about politics in particular, and what kind of use cases that AI can have on politics. And people that are interested in political science have an option of like looking at different career opportunities. And when I was going to school here at UAA, I came from out of state and came up, and I think I was a sophomore. And one of the biggest frustrations I had was there were not a lot of advanced career opportunities because there's no law schools here, there's no medical schools here. And so I was like, okay, well, what other jobs can I do? And finance was one of them for sure, because of the amount of financial opportunities that it leaves, knowledge and different skills that you get by working in the financial services industry. And so I was like, I'll just do that. And so I did that. But there are other areas, and in particular, we're going to cover some of those today. And I don't know how much money you could make if you became a master of some of these skills, but you could learn them here in Alaska. You can learn them from your computer sitting in your living room, and you could make 6 figures or more, most likely, by acquiring these skills and using them, in particular, specifically for political clients. And so you could set up your own business, you can acquire these skills and go work for other people. A lot of them are kind of, most of it's it seems high level. But in the grand scheme of things, it's data. And when you look at data, it's very easy to manipulate. You can use it how you want to use it. And in that process, as long as you're comfortable with the platforms and the material that you're doing, you can use the data for any use cases. So, I mean, if you're comfortable with Excel, a lot of the things that I'm going to cover today, you could very well learn yourself, which is really interesting. And so it gives people that have a wide range of experience, be it data analysis, data science, accounting, political science. Could be a lot of different areas that you may have experience or feel comfortable in. I believe that this is a great avenue for people for their futures. So go ahead and play here.
I muted your video.
I'm sorry?
I muted your video feed.
Oh, okay.
The projector.
No problem. Thank you. Just trying to figure out where the... No. Oh. Where's the play button? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the play button.
Oh, view?
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking for play. Slideshow. Perfect. Thank you. No, that's not where. It's not the beginning. Okay. Just some basic. So the first three things I want to cover is first I want to cover general intelligence. So people talk about, and I love that you had that pamphlet you gave me. It has Peter Thiel in there. And Peter Thiel is actually incredibly famous for talking about general intelligence specifically. I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, we've worked with him before.
That's really cool. So he's a fascinating individual, and he covers a lot of. So he was one of the guys. Peter Thiel. He was one of the co-founders with Elon Musk for PayPal, but he's gone on to do lots of different things since then. A lot of things with AI in particular. So, but one of the famous things that he said recently was talking about artificial and general intelligence. So these are the coverage points. I try to make it simple for people to understand, because when someone says, hey, what is artificial intelligence? It's like they think Skynet, they think iRobot, they think there's lots of different movies and renditions of that. So I don't believe based upon what I read, I don't believe artificial general intelligence is possible. And Peter Thiel's famous for also agreeing with that and actually making that statement. It's primarily because of bias that's associated with development of artificial intelligence. And I'll get more into that later. But internet-connected server-based AI, so that's programmatic AI. So it's based upon the idea that you can program a computer to be smart. And so there's really clever programming out there. And there's also lots of movies about making things with clever programming to make it imitate AI. So there's also that. And server-based internet connectivity, so a lot of Amazon things, pretty much like your little robot rover thing that cleans your carpets, things like that, they're all based upon the idea of having internet connectivity. And then your third is on-demand, no internet AI. So that goes into sensors, small board computers, and microprocessors. And so these have to do with a lot more to have on-demand applications. So you're limiting the AI scope of what it's doing. And so in that process, you're limiting its bias. You're limiting it has no internet connection, has no ability to think on its own or do complicated tasks. It's for small things. So this is a very interesting statement. And it's talking about AI, AI is the future of election campaigns. And when you talk about that, I talk to guys every day all over the country that are running for office. And they think when I talk about things like this, they're like, oh, there's, Facebook, their AI was talking to another AI and they had to shut it down. And that was a conversation I had today with someone. And that's the conception, that's the perception that people have of artificial intelligence. But the grand scheme of things, it's so much broader than that and so much scarier, really. So. The use of artificial intelligence, this is just kind of a blurb, but it is going to change the world. It will change the world for either a good thing or a bad thing, and that's purely based upon the developers, the AI researchers that are actually making the artificial intelligence models. So you have people that are creating programs, creating models to actually communicate with AI and having AI be able to go out and do things on its own. Well, the people that are creating those programs are programming bias into those artificial intelligence programs and robots, drones, various things. And so in that, there's some serious dangers that can actually take place in that. And so this is actually one of the use cases is virtual politicians. So brand new, very few people have even heard of this concept, and it's effective, obviously. This is the guy that ran for South Korea's presidency this year. And these guys, these three here, this gentleman here is actually the chief AI researcher. This is the team that created this, and I'll go into a little more detail about it in a second. But so he's actually just a politician, and his whole digital presence was completely deepfake. So social media, his videos, everything he did online was all a deepfake. It was not him at all. And these three people are the ones that were responsible for creating it. And he won the presidency. Just waiting for this to load. Oh, well, let me go in here, okay? Well, either way. Maybe let me go here. Okay. So yeah, this is the presidency, and so there was a really good video on that. You can look it up on YouTube. The easiest thing to do is just look at YouTube and type in South Korea deepfake presidency if you want to put or a candidate. But yeah, the gentleman behind them on the screen is deepfake. It's not real. And there's actually a really cool video on YouTube of him talking and communicating. And so what they did is they made him more hip. They made him younger. They made him taller. They made his voice a little different, and they made a little more added slang terms that were popular for the time for the younger generations. So, things that you would think in most circumstances would be unethical. There's no regulations about these things. There's nothing stopping people from using this technology for presidential elections in the United States. It's just more of, where the boundaries and where the ethical boundaries are going to be drawn. There's another really useful tool that people use for filtering. So Excel uses various forms of artificial intelligence already that you can access just in formulas and things like that. That you can program the formulas to copy and paste different formulas throughout your different if you're working on different models and whatnot. So it's the same concept, but the difference is now you can program AI to do all of that for you. You don't have to do anything. So you want to know who the 45-year-old people or 45 or younger or 45 or older, and you want to know if they're married, you want to know their voting history, you want to know all this. They can do it click of a finger. It takes no time at all. And a lot of the time, it will project the information that you want for you. You don't even have to do that. You can just be like, who are the people that are most likely going to vote for me? And they'll give you a list. Here's the list of people that are most likely going to vote for you. And as this progresses, think of Google's already really good about listening to your phone conversations and other things. That's why you get advertisements after you've been communicating with your buddy, and 1 minute you're sitting there talking about something, and the next minute you get an advertisement for it. And it's the same concepts. You could think of how unregulated AI, unethical AI could be used to ultimately create filters that could be detrimental to people or exclude people or discriminate people or declassify or classify people in a certain way that makes it where they don't receive the same information that you do. So when I talked about earlier about bias and the artificial and general intelligence and Peter Thiel in particular, and other people like him, they talk about the bias I call it the impossible task, and it's something I coined myself, and it's just because of the many years of study that I've done into this. It seems no matter what circumstance you're in as an AI researcher, you have no ability not to program some sort of bias, because you are who you are. And when you're creating AI, you're creating its own individual thought processes from your thought processes. And even Google, where they take thousands of AI researchers and have them work on individual models for them. And even those models that have thousands of people interacting and creating these models from around the world, there's still bias. And so that's really scary for people that are conservatives in a lot of ways. And it's not saying that conservatives are excluded from this, but conservatives are someone that should be very concerned because of the amount of money that's input into like the liberal side of politics, and a lot of the tech companies that are currently doing a lot with AI are on the liberal side of politics. So it's leaving conservatives as a major disadvantage, and a disadvantage that may not be able to overcome if used in ways like we have mentioned already. At some point, the technology is so vast and the information is so vast that it's very, very difficult to try to fight or combat, or and the more advanced AI gets, the harder and harder it becomes to create something that could be effective against it. And in a sense of effective against it, I just mean having another AI that's also built for your particular purposes. This is another thing too, is the metaverse. So everyone's heard about the metaverse and Facebook. So think of that concept of people in this room, very, very likely in the future, one of you guys might want to run for politics. And so think of this could be a reality for some of you, is that running for politics in the metaverse. So again, like earlier, where the guy was running completely deep fake campaign, the campaign had nothing to do with, it wasn't him anymore on digital form. And so this could be a fundamental aspect of campaigns going forward. And how can we as individuals leverage this technology to the most effective options for people? And I can assure you that politicians, if you guys want to work for politicians, you guys want to set up your own companies to work for politicians, or vice versa, or however you guys want to look at it. But the options, these things are things that you want to look at and pay attention to, because all politics is moving in this direction, for every industry is. And so part of my speaking, this is one area just talking about politics, but I'll be doing presentations with Dr. Mattman from NASA regarding various other use cases of AI in various industries here in Alaska. And so this is just here, but even here you can learn everything I talked about here in Alaska, and you can actually help people in Alaska. And there's no one here doing this type of technology, and no one's using this right now, but they will. How long it takes? Could be 10 years, could be 25 years, as I've said before, but it will be used. And if people are going to be prepared to use it, fantastic. If they're not, then they're going to be at a disadvantage. And so Dr. Mattman here, let's go. These are just some of the guys where I would start with, just because they're very welcoming. Dr. Mattman in particular, if you guys go find him on social media, he does speaking events all over. And so he does Bill Nye right there. He's also an author of 2 books, Tika in Action, and then he also has another book, Machine Learning with TensorFlow. And so TensorFlow is a type of it's a type of language that you use for microcontrollers and small form AI. And then Lawrence Moroney, I'm not sure. But yeah, like I said, if you find him, track him down, and if you message him, he'll message you back if you ever have questions or anything like that. This gentleman, he's really famous for Google, so he's designed like tiny little artificial intelligence chips like this big, that they're image processing chips, but they use them for other things. But they're on satellites now, doing satellite imagery and whatnot. And so a pretty amazing individual. We're very closely related to Google, and also very free with information. You can find courses online regarding various forms of artificial intelligence and what to learn regarding that. I don't know where I'm going here. Andrew, I don't know, I'm not sure of his last name here, but he's very familiar. These two do a lot of work together. And then this one, Luxonis, is a great example of a company that I spoke to the owner of this company. They are actually using one of the chips that I mentioned earlier from Lawrence's company that's associated with Intel. These guys are taking those image processing chips and putting them into the computer, into cameras. And if you want to get started with computer vision, which is the concept idea of what we were talking about earlier with the deepfakes, that starts with computer vision. So that starts with this. There's a couple of languages. Python in particular is like one of the main ones, languages that's used. So if you want to be comfortable with that. But you start with these cameras and you use these to create, you put someone in front of this camera and it takes all the shots that they need, and then you can go in and actually create models based upon extensive videos or photos. And the more models, the more information you have, images, videos, things like that, you can create various forms of artificial intelligence using that. So like Luxonis, relatively new company, been around for just a little bit of time, but they do lots of different things regarding like edge detection, feature tracking, things that you've seen before, I'm sure, in some other areas, like your security cameras, like Nest cameras or Amazon Ring cameras or anything like that. See those little boxes? Those are called bounding boxes in AI. And so you can create those. And on your cameras, you have those and they're internet connected. And so that's the reason why you get the bounding boxes, is because they're programmed to recognize humans, or programmed to recognize license plates, or programmed to recognize characters or human faces. And so they'll create a bounding box and they'll zoom in, or they'll take more detail, or they'll make the camera focus on those particular areas. All that is artificial intelligence. A lot of camera technology, like your phones, are all using artificial intelligence. Most of it, I'd say 99% of it is they're using the internet currently. As we progress over the next 10 to 25 years, the internet connectivity piece, you're going to still have these features available even when you don't have internet, which is pretty exciting. And so how and what you can use this for is wide-ranging, but it all starts with the bases, like the basics, and which is here, even just learning how to do bounding boxes on images. Because as the AI, it has to be able to pay attention to certain features, and you have to teach that AI those features that you want it to pay attention to. And so as you move through, so in that circumstance with the deepfake earlier, with the politician, they had certain features they wanted to emphasize. And so throughout the video conversations and things like that they were doing digitally, they would emphasize certain features more so than others. And so they created bounding boxes to do that. And so there's a lot of legwork ultimately that comes into this, but there was only 3 people that were responsible for that. And that gentleman won the presidency of South Korea. So it's pretty amazing. And it's just to think of like how that could be used for other politicians going forward. It leaves it very open for people like yourselves or anybody to get involved. So it's not restricted like a lot of other industries, and you can do it without an advanced degree. And there's really not that many advanced degrees that help you in these areas because of how quickly this technology is advancing every year. And so just a little bit about us. This is just some of the work that I've done throughout the Pacific Northwest and other states, various industries that I've worked with. And these are the 2 companies that I own. I started them both from scratch. So I've owned Leading Light Advisors for about 6 years now. I left the banking industry. I've been doing that ever since. It's been very successful. I've worked with clients like Sarah Palin and NASA. This year I worked on her campaign, and I also worked on governor races and U.S. congressional races in Arizona all at the same time. So there's a lot of opportunity even here, even if you live in Alaska, in regards to politics. There's a lot of areas to cover, and it's always hard to figure out what to do when you leave college. Like, where are you going to go? Like, how am I going to make money? Things like that. And so I've been there. I did that. And so like I did the corporation thing, and I realized that I really wanted to work for myself. And I always wanted to work for myself. I didn't know at the time, but once I did, I could never go back to work for someone else. So like I'll do anything, and that's why I say I'm a consultant to people, is because I'll do anything I have to do to pay my bills, so that way I don't have to work for someone else, ultimately, because it's so wide-ranging. If you're a young person, you have a lot of like technology skills, you can apply those in a lot of areas that help people, especially politicians, because they struggle. with a lot of things. And so that could be your leg in, volunteering to help candidates. We have a assembly candidate here right now, but there's other people I invited, senators and House people in the future. I'll hopefully be able to bring them to these types of conversations. But they always need to interact with people and get to know people. And so that's one of the biggest problems that I see, is that there's a gap between the people that are in office and the people that are wanting to either go work for someone in politics or want to become a politician themselves. And so hopefully we can start bridging that gap over time. And that's it. Any questions?
Unpack a little bit more what you're talking about with AI helping campaigns. I mean, it goes beyond just producing a list of people whose houses doors are going to knock on, right? Can you talk?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, going from the graphic design work, from logo creation, you could create a model that's designed specifically that makes really it's gone through, and you've taken 1,000 successful campaigns. And you've taken their logos and you broke them down with bounding boxes of all the different, and then you teach that AI model that 1,000 images, and now it's able to you plug in someone's name and it creates, however many images you want, however many logos you want. And it takes all the popular things that you believe that were successful or what drove that success, and ultimately creates logos based on that. That's just one example. It could do that with images as well. It could do that with videos. It could keep going. So I mean, there's millions of options ultimately. Slogans, yep. And you could just take every successful campaign that's ever been ran in the United States and create a model on that. There's nothing stopping you from being able to do that. Yeah, and so once the model's built, the money is limitless because you've done all the legwork, and so all you do is press enter. And then it creates plan. And people see this on social media, I already know, because it's on Instagram and stuff where they're like, oh, I asked AI to make this for me, and then they created this. So they're create a J.K. Rowling, or Harry Potter's castle, or create Lord of the Rings, whatever. And so it takes the words from the book and recreates the drawing and recreates the imagery for you. And so that's something we're moving into. That's a reality. So you can pretty much, your wildest imagination of the possible uses of AI for politics, you can get there. Any area. But like you pointed out, slogans, logos, colors, video, photos, backgrounds, all that stuff. It could do.
So if you're a senior in college and you're looking forward to graduating soon, and sees this presentation and thinks that's really cool. I want to learn that, and that is the future, and so I want it. But I can't find any classified ads for AI beginner and job ads.
Yeah.
What's my next step?
I think one of the first things to do is to identify what part of AI that you're really interested in. So in this circumstance, like this gentleman mentioned, is what are some of the areas that could be most effective? Well, we mentioned some, and we'll say you want to pick some of those, and then you have to learn how those technologies work. And so the Luxonis would be a great starting point. And then those other AI researchers, those guys will give you everything from low level, and this is all available online, and you can learn it sitting in your living room, like I said, because I didn't go and I said, reaching out to Dr. Mattman's an important thing because he is an advanced individual and knows a lot about this topic. He's working with, Mars rovers and Voyagers and all this other stuff that, I couldn't even try to comprehend. And the amount of data that he processes, you couldn't do without artificial intelligence. It's not possible. So finding people like that you can reach out to and leverage and ask questions to, those, unfortunately, they're not going to be as helpful as you want them to be. As I pointed out, there's not a lot of classes about this topic, and it's because it's so new and so fresh. So you have to find those courses to kind of build that base level skills, and then from there you can choose what area of AI that you want to kind of go into. But you definitely want to have a basic understanding of Python, a basic understanding of how some of these models work, but like very teachable. Python's the easiest program language out there. It's